Hello, I am Scott McMahon. Welcome to the Bigger Truth Podcast. And I am going to get right into it today. I've got the title of today's show is the Maricopa County Anti-Republican Committee. And I am going to show how they really aren't the Republican Committee. They're the Anti-Republican Committee. And some things that have happened just in the last, really the last week and a half, that I'm going to focus on three of those things that really prove that the Shelby Bush has led the outcome of her leadership in the Maricopa County Republican Committee, as she has made it the Anti-Republican Committee. And now, if you're not in Arizona, stick around, because I think that you will see the commonalities. If you're here in Michigan, you'll be shocked at how similar some of these initiatives are to what's happened here in Michigan. We're also going to be talking, if you're in other states, you'll see the similarities. I'm also going to be talking quite a bit about the National Convention and how what is happening in Maricopa County relates to directly what we may be able to expect at the National Convention. And so let's go ahead and get right into it. We're going to start with, could we step back? I know you only have about 5 minutes. So this is a recording with a phone call that I had with Shelby Bush, and this was a few months ago. After this, and she started seeing my reporting, she saw that I'd pretty much already come to some conclusions that I can't necessarily trust anything that she tells me, so she hasn't really talked to me much. So when I tried to text her or call her, she has not responded. But this conversation, and especially these 2 minutes here that I'm just going to play right through, I might pause and talk about it, but these 2 minutes are pretty important as far as understanding a little bit more about her background and specifically her connections with the Flynn family. So here we go.
Yeah.
Could we step back just a little bit? And I know you talked to Jason Ike, and I know he's with the America Project, and I know Mike Flynn is involved with the America Project, and I'm wondering when you first met Mike Flynn.
Oh my goodness. Sure. So I'm really trying to think if I met him before or after a certain period of time. Steve and I have known Joe Flynn, probably since 2015, 2016, 17. I don't know. As busy as we've been, it kind of blurs. But we met Joe Flynn well before the 2020 election. We weren't good friends or didn't know him well. We were introduced through a mutual friend, and we had kind of a friendship with him, but we weren't involved in anything they were doing. After the 2020 election, Steve and I were called up to D.C. to participate in the group of investigators that were trying to figure out what happened, in the 2020.
Why were you invited? Why were you included in that?
Because Steve and I have actually been doing investigations on elections since 2016.
Okay.
We worked with, I don't know if you remember, there was like this documentary Kill Chain.
Yes.
Okay. And the guy that was former CIA, Kevin Shipp, was in that Kill Chain video.
Okay.
So we had met Kevin Shipp through some mutual kind of military, former intelligence people. And Kevin Shipp asked Steve and I if we would do some research on the history of American elections and the voting machines and help him put together a report for Congress.
Okay. So this is brand new. I haven't published this in any way. I've mentioned it a couple times in various podcasts and comments on social media, and I think I've mentioned it even in a couple stories that she's known Joe Flynn and the Flynn family now for 7 to 9 years. But I think there are some really important facts here that she lays out, and I do believe that she was being honest and truthful about this section of it. So she says that she was involved in the Kill Chain documentary. And now the Kill Chain documentary was produced by HBO, and it was all about machine fraud. And it was released in 2020, 2019, 2020, right before the 2020 election. And it was done by Kevin Shipp and a bunch of other military intelligence people. Now, she met Joe Flynn, she said, through some military intelligence contacts that they already had, which is very interesting. So Shelby Bush, when she says Steve, she's talking about Steve Robinson. This is her longtime boyfriend. As far as I know, she is married to someone else and that there's never been a divorce, but she's living with Steve Robinson. I don't know. Not my circus, not my monkeys, but it's just kind of weird. So Steve Robinson, I don't know if these are Shelby's military intelligence connections or Steve's military intelligence connections, but he is a militia guy. Even at the last state convention, he was wearing a leather biker's jacket that was a militia jacket. And I've been told that he is or has been a member of the 3 Percenters. And so he does have a militia background. And there's, she's claiming right here that they, meaning she and Steve, one or both have military, longstanding military intelligence connections. So that to me is a bombshell. That's a big deal. Because most of the people that are the top level operators within the Mike Flynn organization have military intelligence background. I mentioned Jason Ikes in here because she had mentioned Jason Ikes. Jason is someone here in Michigan who I had previously known before this conversation. And I know that he works with the America Project. I had a 2-hour conversation. It was the first conversation I ever had with him on March 2nd at the Michigan State Convention of the District Caucuses. And I'll save the story about that conversation for another time. But suffice it to say that I didn't find it a pleasurable conversation. So, but certainly interesting. So she had mentioned Jason because she knows Jason. And Jason, one of the things he told me in that conversation is that he was out there in Arizona. He's been out there multiple times, and that he was there in December meeting with Shelby. And this was in the weeks before the takeout of then chair, AZ GOP chair, Jeff DeWitt, that she and Carrie Lake were working together, presumably at that time, and presumably also with the help of Jason and the America Project, to plan his takeout and their intended replacement with Jim O'Connor. So that's Jason Ikes, who also happens to have a military intelligence background, and obviously, as having been working for the America Project for a few years, is close to Mike Flynn, and he claims to be close to Mike Flynn. So here we have Shelby Bush admitting that she has known Joe Flynn for 7 to 9 years, since, she says, 15, 16, or 17. But she says that she started working on the Kill Chain documentary in 16. And I suspect, I think that it's not at all irrational to infer that the Flynns were involved in the Kill Chain documentary. I believe that documentary was part psyop to prepare people to believe that the fraud was all in the machines. And more on that at a later date. But I share this just because this is a good introduction. This was my introduction to Shelby Bush the first time that I ever talked to her. So let's move on. We do have quite a bit to cover. So Bush has been paid $700,000 by the Flynn Orbit. And this here is documentation from, I took this off of the state political funding website that shows that her organization, We the People Arizona PAC, or We the People Arizona Alliance PAC, which she is the president of, has received about $700,000 between the America Project, Patrick Byrne, and Mike Lindell. And so those are the receipts for that. Let's see here. We're going. So she was elected just over a year ago, about I think it was January of 23. She was elected to the vice chair of MCRC. That's Maricopa County Republican Committee, hereafter I will refer to as MCARC, I don't know, McCrack, the Maricopa County Anti-Republican Committee. So, and she was elected thanks to Kari Lake's endorsement. And several people that I've spoken with have suggested that they don't know that the slate of, and it's been called the disruptor slate. I now call them the anti-Republican slate, that they were endorsed by Kari Lake, which is very strange for someone to give an endorsement like that within inter-party politics, but she did. There were only 2 of the people that she endorsed did not get elected. All the rest of them did. And since then, it has been a record of censures, removing people that do not give them their complete allegiance. She claims to be the election integrity expert, as you kind of hear on the call there, that she's been researching elections since 2016. But what has she really done? And what have any of these people actually done to make our elections more secure? The thing that they never say, which is absolutely true, is that the only way that we can make our elections more secure is to get more Republicans elected, and specifically Republicans that'll actually work to make our elections more secure. And but if we don't have Republican majority, if we don't have a Republican in the governorship to sign those bills, the Constitution clearly says that it's the state legislatures that determine the manner in which elections are held, and they don't talk about that. They only like to complain and talk about the machines and things that we can't really control. What we can control is electing Republicans, which is supposed to be the purpose of the Republican Party. That is the purpose of the Republican Party, is to elect Republicans. But no, they focus on censures, and they focus on top-down power structures. So MCRC has 20 legislative districts, or LDs, within its borders. 2/3 of the voters of Arizona are in Maricopa County. And just in the last year, just over a year, Shelby Bush and MCRC has been involved in election interference, as the so-called election integrity expert, election interference in LD elections for LD 3, 4, 11, 26, and I believe also 14. They tried there, but Andrew Adams is too much of a stud for them to take him out. And the same thing with Morgan Perry in 4. They tried. He had to be elected 3 times because they tried twice unsuccessfully to invalidate his prior election. So that's the election integrity expert for you. Now, so I said I was going to talk about 3 things that have happened in the last week and a half. And so the first that we're going to talk about is the National Convention. Now, Shelby has been elected. Shelby was elected the chair of the Arizona delegation to the National Convention. And last week, I believe it was Tuesday night, they held a training meeting for national delegates and alternates. And I heard from the first thing the next morning. It was so shocking to them. I heard from 2 people who had been in the meeting, and I got confirmation also from a third that about what had happened at that meeting. And this is a slide. This is a slide that was published first by Laura Loomer. She did not get this from me or from my sources. I think I know who her source is, but it's not me or my sources. I'll make that very clear. It's been accused of being me, but I don't know Laura. I don't know if I'm sure, it's pretty obvious because all these people have gone on their hands and knees pleading with Laura Loomer to set the record straight and exonerate Shelby Bush. And I don't know if they've noticed, but Laura Loomer doesn't really listen to them. You can't just message. You can't just DM Laura Loomer. She's got hundreds of thousands of followers. You can't just DM her and she'll respond and she'll, oh, this sounds like a good story. I'm going to prioritize this. The suggestion that this came from me is pretty silly. But yeah, so I'll leave that at that. But after this slide was published by Laura Loomer, then I decided to kind of take it and run with it. And I've posted quite a bit on X about it. You can look at my X at Bigger Truth and scroll through, and there's a lot of interesting content there. And I just now with this, I've just finished writing a pretty lengthy column that goes into some detail about it as well. Here's what was most shocking about this meeting. Shelby Bush, according to my sources who were there in the room, talked about conspiring with 7 other states to suspend the rules to the convention. Now, they claim to be for Trump. But if you don't mess with the rules, if the rules aren't suspended or altered in any way, Trump is the nominee. So any talk of multiple rounds, any talk of suspending the rules has one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to hurt Trump. So it does not matter how for Trump she says she is. She was up there on the stage with Joe Neglia, he calls himself a parliamentarian, but he talks about breaking and bending the rules. The people can do whatever they want. It's nonsense. But this is who he is, and he's on the rules committee. They were talking. They were there for 2.5 hours at this meeting, and they talked about suspending the rules and how to do it. Like they were the ones that were going to do it, that they were working with other states. It takes 8 states to do it, to bring it to the floor for a floor vote. And then it requires a 2/3 vote on the floor in order to successfully suspend the rules. Do I think it's going to happen? No, I don't think that they're going to get 2/3. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to try. And I don't think she's even close to done trying. The reality is on this slide, there's 4 different motions: suspend the rules, previous question, roll call vote, and place into nomination. Now, place into nomination means nominate a candidate other than Trump. Why in the world would they be talking about this if they were for Trump? They wouldn't even be talking about it. You know, I could see saying, okay, well, we're gonna talk about, you know, because we're afraid that because what they project on the establishment, which by the way, I've seen no evidence at all that the establishment has the money, the support in terms of the numbers of delegates, or even the desire to replace Trump. I'm seeing no evidence of that. There might be a few isolated people, there might be the Reince Priebuses and stuff, but they just do not have the delegate support that they would need to even attempt it. And I don't see that happening. The only way I see that happening is if they somehow partner with these Flynn followers like Shelby Bush. That's the only way I see it happening. And even then, I just don't think it's likely. And part of the proof of that is that Trump has raised hundreds of millions of dollars now since his conviction, much of that from so-called establishment sources. So if the establishment is now giving Trump, you know, they're now donating to Trump's campaign, that's a pretty clear indication that they've given up on trying to remove him. So this whole projection thing that the Flynn circle is doing, and including people like Mike Gill saying that it's the establishment that's going to cause a brokered convention. Now, a brokered convention doesn't exist. It's not a real thing, a brokered convention. That's just not a real term. And so, you know, what it would be a, you know, a chaotic convention, one where the rules are suspended, where it goes multiple rounds, but there's going to be rules. You know, even if the rules are suspended, then what happens is then they're changed and then voted on, and then the meeting goes on. So the meeting has to have rules. It has to abide by those rules. Now, there are rules that enable the people, because it's a grassroots organization by structure. There are rules that enable the people to change the rules if enough people say that that's needed. And that's what they plan to take advantage of. So any one of these 4 motions would hurt Trump. They would hurt the Republican Party. They would cause chaos. They would create embarrassment. Now, there are 2 other things that Shelby Bush was talking about at this meeting that I want to put out there because they're stupid. Okay, so one of them is a 1 day, 1 vote initiative. They want to have the whole convention pass a resolution saying 1 day, 1 vote. That you know, that this is what we want. We need to have 1 day, 1 vote. Now, here's why it's stupid. It's not what the convention's for. The convention is to nominate our president and vice president candidate for the party. That's what the convention's for. The convention is to bring together all the people within the party and come behind and rally behind our nominee and create kind of the momentum and the energy to get us through to the primary election. That's what the convention's for. It's not for virtue signals. And that's all this would be a virtue signal. What is the point in saying we need one day, one vote? There is no point. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to change our laws. The only thing it would do, here's the only thing that it would do, is it would help Democrats. And the reason why it would help Democrats is it would continue in their psyop to discourage Republicans from even voting. That's what the machine fraud narrative is. It's designed to create hopelessness and despair in Republican voters. What's the point of even voting? My vote's just going to be stolen anywhere. So the additional point of the one day, one vote psyop which is what this is. This is a Democrat psyop from Shelby Bush. That's what it is. The point of this psyop is to discourage early voting. Right now, Republicans have a 2-to-1 disadvantage in early voting. If we're going to win in November, we need to create a red wave right now. We can do it right now, today. In most states, right now, as you're watching this, you can go and you can even just keep listening to me and just search on your Secretary of State website, whatever it is in your state, how to get on the permanent absentee voter rolls. So that we're permanent AV voter, register to vote early. You want to get registered to vote early, get on the permanent AV list in your state right now. If we get enough Republicans doing this, we are going to create a red wave starting right now. And that dramatically increases our odds of winning in November. So if you are a Republican, or even if you're an independent, or even if you're a center-left Democrat, and you just want to make sure that you have time to vote early, whoever you choose to vote for, you don't need to decide who to vote for now, just that you're going to vote early. So that, like here in Michigan, there's some really stupid, terrible new election laws that come from thanks to the Democrats that say that they can't, that poll workers can't ask for ID. So what that means is somebody can go and they can just say, "Hey, I'm Scott McMahon. Here's my address. Can I have my ballot?" And they'll say, "Oh, sure. I can't ask for your ID. So here you go. You look like Scott McMahon." They don't know who I am whoever the poll worker is there. And so, yeah, it's just, that can happen. And so the best way to ensure that that doesn't happen is to vote early. The best way, if you really care about election integrity, you should be working the polls. And you have no excuse to work the polls on election day, especially in areas where, like if you're in Michigan, in Detroit, in Flint, in some of the bigger cities, the Democrat run cities, they need Republican poll workers, and you get paid to do it. So you could do that if you've already voted. When you vote early, another benefit is you get to spend some time with your ballot. So I've talked about this before. Voting early is so important. Do it. Sign up right now. If you haven't done it yet, if you're still listening to me and you haven't done it, go do it right now. You don't even have to hit pause. You can just open a new tab, go register, figure out how to do it right now. It'll take you less than 5 minutes. Pause if you want and come back. I'm not going anywhere. So, but that's clearly what these people don't want, because these people are helping the Democrats, whether they are Democrats themselves or they're just Democrat operatives, or they've just been so deeply misled by the Flynn military intelligence psyop, the deep state psyop, that they are working for the Democrats. They are aiding and abetting the Democrats. Everything that they do aids and abets the Democrats, because that's who they are. Whether they're Democrats actually in name, or they spend so much time hating on so-called rhinos, but by their actions, they are the rhinos. They are the fake Republicans. They're the anti-Republicans. And they hate Republicans. They hate Republicans more than they hate Democrats. Okay. So let's go on to Shelby Bush's response. So after I put out my story, and then my initial story, which didn't name her, I was I decided last week that I was going to put out a story that just said more in general and broad terms, not specific even to Arizona. And the meeting that I was talking about is this meeting that was that Shelby Bush led. But after Laura Loomer posted that slide and posted her thing on X, then I decided to go out and share all the details that I knew about this meeting. So I did. And I was saying, Shelby Bush needs to put out a response. And that response should say something along the lines of, we're committed to following the rules. It was a mistake to say that we want to suspend the rules. I don't know what I was thinking. Whatever excuse she wants to come up with, I don't care. Just to say that they're committed to following and respecting the rules and the voters' primary election choice. The voters chose Trump. So, we want to make sure that we support Trump, and we want to make sure that there's an orderly convention, and we're not going to interfere with that in any way. Okay, so she put out this response. This response did not do that. This response was saying, we love Trump, we love Trump, we love Trump, MAGA, 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 we love Trump. And that's it. That's it. And then it said 3 times, she repeated the mantra, and it is like a mind control mantra. Trump bound every round. Trump bound every round. And she even put it in all caps all 3 times that it's in here. Trump bound every round. So that the crazy thing is that, like I said, if the rules are followed, if the rules are not suspended, there's only 1 round. Her mantra tells you exactly what their plan is. They still plan on suspending the rules. I believe it. Absolutely. We'll see. I hope I'm proven wrong. I would love to be proven wrong. And it is just a great, happy, peaceful convention. And Ivan Raiklin's Antifa style goons don't bring their pitchforks and show up like they say they're going to at every single hotel that the delegates are going to be staying at, and don't go and harass people at the convention or at the hotel or in the lobby of the hotel or at the restaurants that they're eating at, like he's talking about. I mean, he's talking about that. It's crazy, but that's what he's saying that they need to do in order to protect Trump. That does not protect Trump, folks. If you're thinking about going to be a protester with Ivan Raiklin at the convention, you are not supporting Trump. You are absolutely hurting Trump. Anybody who would say that that's what they're doing is a liar and an aid. They're aiding and abetting the Democrats. That's what they're doing. And you could say, oh, well, they're going to help Flynn. BS. Flynn is not a Republican. Okay. He was never registered as a Republican until 2021. He only did then in order to support the precinct strategy, this is the response, all this craziness, this anti-Republican cult that's within Republican parties all across the state is a result of the precinct strategy that Mike Flynn was involved in. And he became a Republican so that he could become a precinct committeeman or delegate in, I think, Sarasota County is his home county in Florida, where he resides or resided at the time, which, by the way, has become a complete and total mess. I read a story about that the so-called America Firsters took control over the party bank account. They formed their own club because they apparently weren't, the people who ran the club weren't happy with their chaos and anger and their hatred towards other Republicans. So they formed their own America First whatever club, Republican club. They had the treasurer on their side, so they took the bank account with them with $10,000 in it, I think, and they took the furniture, the office furniture, and even the coffee maker from the actual party. So this is in Mike Flynn's own home county. So it's happening everywhere, and it's because of Flynn, Steve Bannon, Dan Schultz, Jack Posobiec, all of these people who have promoted it. And recruiting low information delegates who are easily manipulated and have been indoctrinated into their primary hatred is towards Republicans. So I say, what happened to we the people? We the people, are the primary voters, right? We decided on Trump. She says, pro Trump, pro Trump, pro Trump, but then she says Trump bound in every round. So she's a hypocrite. And that's just what she is. It is very clear. All right, let's move on. So, second thing, this happened just last night in LD3. LD3 is the second largest legislative district in the entire country. It's the largest in Arizona. It's in Scottsdale. It's this really large geographic and by population. It goes from Anthem and far northern, like north of Phoenix, all the way through, and includes a lot of Scottsdale. And Shelby Bush was involved in a takeover of LD3 back in March of last year, where she and her goons, really, including Brian Ferentz and others, took over LD3. They formed a second LD3. So there were two LD3s. LD3A was the original LD3. Chair of that group was Candace Zarni, who I had on my show a couple months ago now. And then LD3B was started by Bob Gomez. Now, when the takeover happened, or when DeWitt was ousted, I believe, this isn't my original belief, I got this from others who are within the party, that they believe that a big part of the motivation for getting rid of DeWitt was that he was standing behind and he was acknowledging and recognizing Candace Zarni as the legitimate chair of LD3. Now, this was critical because this was going to determine the outcome of the upcoming nominating convention. And this was back in January, February, is when I realized how important it is to these people that they choose who the national delegates are. This is when I first started writing about how there could be chaos at the national convention over 3 months ago, because I saw how important it was to them. It was so important to them that they ousted the chair, because they knew that if they could get Bob Gomez's group to be the official LD3, that they would have the numbers to take over the party, and especially to send their delegates to the national convention. And that's what they did. They succeeded. It was just like the 2020 election, how the mail-in ballots and COVID and all that stuff was done to us. It was done to us. This is exactly the same spirit that these insurgents did to the Arizona Republican Party. And if you're a part of that because you think that, they're America first, and you listen to Steve Bannon and you listen to Mike Flynn or you listen to whoever, and they tell you that you got to be America first and that they're the only ones that care about election integrity, that's BS. Every Republican cares about election integrity. In fact, I would say that those who are attacked by these factions care much more about election integrity. And the proof of that is in the pudding of their actions, because they're the only ones who work to elect Republicans. These people are phonies. Now, here's the proof of this. This is all the buildup for these. This is what happened last night at the meeting. And I got a text a few minutes ago. It may have been, let me see. No, I don't have the exact quotes yet, but I'm going to include them in my story. So I am talking to some people that were at the meeting, trying to get some quotes from Bob Gomez. What they told me that he said is pretty extraordinary at the meeting, but I'm just going to focus on what he did, because I have copies of these two censures. Now, what they did is they censured 5 state legislators, 3 members of the House of Representatives, and 2 senators. And what they censured them for, now a censure means to remove them from the party, to declare that they are not Republicans. Now, these 5 state legislators, what they censured them for is for doing something that is more powerful in its helping of the Republican Party and their electoral chances in November than I think just about anybody else in all of Arizona. And what they did is they voted to kill the 1864 anti-abortion law that prohibited almost all abortion. Now, had that stood like the Freedom Caucus and all of these anti-Republicans wanted they voted for it, and all these anti-Republicans now are censuring these people, saying that they're not pro-life because they didn't vote for this 1864 bill. That bill had these 5 Republicans not done this, that it was already on course. It was getting so much media attention. It was getting so much energy from independents, even from moderate Republicans. It would have absolutely guaranteed that Trump would have lost in November, and that Republican Party would have lost the state house and legislature in November. Guaranteed. I guarantee it. And that's just not my opinion. That's just, that was across the board. This was their biggest by far. Sorry about that. This was by far their biggest. It was a rallying cry. They were using the left, and the mainstream media was using that 1864 abortion law to really rally their troops. And they were going to use that to just sweep Arizona. And these 5 Republicans voted with the Democrats to kill that bill. Had they not done that, because they did that, it took all the energy away from that. The whole abortion thing, they cut the energy that the abortion issue had. The abortion issue is what made the red wave into the red trickle in 22. It was the abortion issue. And now I am as pro-life as they come. I think that all abortion at any stage is murder. I think it is absolutely, I don't even like the word abortion. I think it's a euphemism that keeps us from remembering what it really is. It is baby murder. But the reality that we have to face, if we're going to be serious about being involved in the political realm, is we have to win elections. And Trump recognizes this. And that's what and even before he came out with his statement, I was thinking the exact same thing, that we need to really, as a Republican Party, and I was so grateful to Trump for doing this, we need to just, take the L now. We've lost for now on the abortion issue, because we've lost independence on it. And in states like Michigan and Arizona and many other states, there are more registered independents than there are Republicans or Democrats. And so you can't win an election without winning the hearts and minds of the independents. You just can't do it. And so, and the Democrats know this, and they know that it doesn't matter how far left they go, how Marxist they are in their policies, how poor everybody feels because of their economic policies. None of that stuff matters if they can convince enough independent women that Republicans are trying to take away their freedom of choice. I think it's absolutely stupid. It's horrible, but it doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what you think. What matters is what independents think. So if you can't accept that, then you don't deserve to be around in politics. So, that's just like 101. And what matters today is what independents think. And that doesn't mean you have to be an independent. But what it does mean is you can't turn off independence. You can't drive independents to want to vote for the other party. And that's exactly what the abortion issue was doing. And that's exactly what these 5 heroes that were censured last night by LD3 did. They cut the legs out from under the Democrats in their effort to what would have been their number one driving force to win over independent voters in Arizona. They should be treated as heroes. But Shelby Bush and her guy, Bob Gomez, censored him. And from what I understand, he talked about censoring them again. There were other state legislators that had been censored in the past for something, because that's what they do. That's what these anti-Republicans do. They don't talk about getting out the vote. They don't talk about supporting candidates. They talk about censoring candidates, censoring and hating Republicans that they hate, and how to hate them even better. That's what they talk about. And they call them demons and whatever else. I mean, these people they're anti-Republicans. So they proved it last night. Now I have even better. This right here, this email is from last week. So I don't know. I think that this is all, and I know you can't see it. It's on the story here. I put the whole thing so you can read it in the story. I highlighted a few things right here that I'm going to try to read. I think I can read them off my screen. It's a little small. My eyes are getting old, but this email is absolutely shocking. So, and I think that this is because these people, they have won. They really won the party, and they've been gloating, and they think that they're indestructible. And so they're just in their arrogance, their hubris. They're just acting out of hubris. And that's what Shelby Bush's meeting last week was. It was pure hubris. And they have nobody to hold them accountable, I guess, but little me. So here I am. And I really hope that more Republicans in Arizona start speaking out publicly and condemning this. I really hope that more PCs in Arizona start opening their eyes and saying, this stuff is not constitutional. These people are not Republicans. Now, this is proof. Okay. So this email went out to the MCRC EGC. That's the Executive Guidance Committee. I was never supposed to get this. They were very careful with this, but they made a big critical error. And this email ended up getting to me. They sent it very carefully only to their people, but they made an error in one of the emails that they sent out, and it went to a friend of mine, and it ended up getting forwarded to me. What this email, the purpose of this email was to call an emergency EGC meeting for MCRC, only among their invited faithful. And it says right here in the second sentence, Joe Neglia now is his word apparently is gospel to these people, because he's the parliamentarian that says that whatever they want to do, he's the rules for thee, but not for me, parliamentarian. So whatever he says, it's official. So it doesn't matter. I can make up the rules, but as long as Joe Neglia says, yeah, it's okay, then I guess it's okay. And it's real, and it follows the bylaws. So, and listen to this. This is just so absurd. Okay. I got to get closer. Joe Neglia believes that per county bylaws, a 60% vote may be required to endorse any candidate in the Republican primary, and that 18 votes will be required in every case of a nominee being introduced for consideration. Okay. So the purpose of this email is to set up a meeting to hold a nominating convention for MCRC to nominate candidates for the primary. Now, in every Republican Party, county, district, state, this is heavily frowned upon. It is an absolutely self-destructive practice for the Republican, and this is proven over and over and over again, for the Republican Party to endorse candidates in the primary. It's just not, it's against the bylaws, universally against the bylaws, it's against custom, and it never goes well for the party or the candidates. The way that the party should work is the party should remain neutral and equally supportive of all candidates in the primary. And when it comes to the general, they get behind their nominee. But that's not what MCRC wants to do. They don't want to do that at all, because they're the McCrack, the Maricopa County Anti-Republican Committee. And so they want to endorse their candidates, and they tell us what candidates they're wanting to endorse. They're not like putting it up to a vote. No, they're only selecting their yes men. They are intentionally excluding everyone else. And Joe Neglia here says, well, we just need 60% of MCRC EGC to vote. So that means we can exclude the minority. They don't need to, that pesky minority. They don't need to even know about this. We can hold the vote even without them even knowing about it. Joe Neglia says it's okay, so that means it's okay. And whatever Joe Neglia says is gospel. All right. This is ridiculous. So they tell us now who they want to. Let's move on. So it says right here that this will be a significant boost to the grassroots candidates. And now is the time for the county party to continue to be bold, or to continue, its bold winning streak by weighing in with endorsements for the candidates that And then here's their 4 criteria. These are their selection criteria that they're going to use to select the candidates that they're going to tell everybody else, all the rest of us, who to vote for because of their intellectual superiority. And they actually indicate here that they are the intellectually superior. They say, ignore the dozens of emails you have each received from Marissa Hamilton and company, attempting to pressure you into believing the email list of names really have educated opinions on the subject, which they don't. So anybody that receives an email saying that there should not be, that the county party should not be doing endorsements, anybody that receives that email does not have an educated, according to Michael Schaefer, who wrote this, does not have an educated opinion. They don't have an educated opinion. His opinion is the only one that matters, apparently. And Shelby Bush's opinion is the only one that matters. And this unified mind, whatever, group think, correct think, right think, whatever they are, they're collectivists, they're communists. Their communist thinking is the correct thinking. And anyone that has the incorrect thinking, well, they're just not informed. So, yeah. And he goes on to say that they may not even be Republicans. It doesn't even matter. Ignore them. Only listen to us. Ignore them. Only listen to us. So if you're in Michigan or maybe in Oregon or any of the Idaho, any of the other, South Carolina, I have subscribers now in almost half the states. Wherever you are, you have probably seen this kind of language within the Republican Party. This is not Republican thinking. Okay. The Republican Party is the party of individualism, not collectivism. Collectivists are Marxists, leftists, socialists, communists, globalists. They are collectivists. That's who these people are. These are not Republicans. These are anti-Republicans. They are trying to tell the rest of us who we need to vote for. This is something that's not new to MCRC. We saw the same thing here in Michigan. They wanted to take away primary elections altogether. They called it the closed caucus scheme, and only the delegates that they allowed to remain as delegates, because they didn't speak out against them, because they were rewriting the bylaws and we caught them and we kicked out all these mofos because that's what they are. They're collectivists. They're leftists. Christina Caramo says that she's a Christian. She isn't. She's an anti-Christian. These people, what she does does not line up with what she says. And that's the case with all of these people. They say one thing, they say they're for Trump, they say they're America first, but they are liars. These people are liars and they're thieves. They've stolen the party from us. We cannot let them do this. We need to stand up and take it back. So, all right, let's listen to these 4 criteria. Oh, are you ready? The first one is, and this is in all caps, they support President Trump. Okay. And so we've talked now how Shelby Bush says she put out a statement. She definitely supports President Trump. She put out a statement. Of course, she deleted the statement a few hours later. I'm not exactly sure why. I got some theories, but she deleted the statement a few hours later, but she put out a statement that says how much she supports President Trump. So you better believe her. She definitely believes President Trump. She definitely supports him. All these people definitely support President Trump. That's why they're wanting to suspend the rules. That's why it's so important to them to show up on the rules committee and change the rules. That's why it's been such a priority to them from the very beginning, like they're directed from above to become national delegates because they support President Trump. They don't have any vested interest at all in changing the rules. They don't have any vested interest at all in hurting Trump and hurting the party. The thing is that what they did, these censures last night, they were an attack on Trump. These people cannot say that they are Trump supporters and censure Republicans in purple districts that are taking away the Democrats' ability to manipulate and draw in independent voters. I mean, those 5 did more for Trump than any of these people, the Shelby Bushes, have ever done what have they ever done for President Trump? All they have done is whine and complain. about election fraud. All they have done is one psyop after another in order to convince people that there's no point in voting. All that they've ever done is convince people that they need to vote on election day instead of voting early, which was the cause, really, of the problems in 22. Because all the Republicans were voting for, especially in Arizona, because all the Republicans were voting on election day, and they changed the laws. They weren't good changes in the laws where there were there were fewer and larger voting centers. So and then they were printing up the ballots on demand. And so all they needed to do was have longer lines, so a few more delays, some staffing problems, and some printer problems. And that would just disenfranchise Republican voters, especially because it was the Republican voters that were stupid enough to fall for the Mike Flynn-led psyop to get them to vote early or to vote on election day. And now they're continuing to do the same thing. Brian Frentz, you go to his Twitter, he's on and on and on about how early voting is a psyop. Why anybody believes these people, I don't understand. These people are not Republicans. Okay, so that's the first one, because they know, they can tell who supports President Trump, and anybody that they say doesn't support President Trump, well, they obviously don't support President Trump because they know better than you and I do. Next one are really MAGA. No, I'm not joking. That's their words. They know who is really MAGA. And it even says in parentheses, not just using the name and to mislead us. So they know who is really MAGA, and they know who's lying, and they're the source of truth. Everything else is misinformation, disinformation. They don't sound at all like Democrats, do they? They don't sound at all like Democrats. All right. So that's number two. Number one, really for Trump. Number two, really MAGA. Number three, they're pro-life. Okay. Like I said, I already talked about that. I don't need to rehash it anymore. That is a psyop to prevent. You want to make sure that we repel independent voters. Make sure we're nominating only pro-life candidates. That doesn't mean, they could be pro-life. And in fact, I think every Republican should be pro-life. I would really question any Republican that is not like Carrie Lake, that is not like, really pro-life. I would really question their morality, and their ease with the idea of killing babies. However, that should not be a primary consideration. If they are overtly in your face, I need to change, and we're going to change the election laws now. We want to ban all abortion right now. That's not a way to win elections, folks. If we want to ban abortion, we have to make it unthinkable. And that comes from one-on-one conversations. We need to have the intellectual, spiritual, and emotional maturity to engage with our neighbors and talk about things that matter, like abortion, in a winsome way and an effective way to persuade hearts and minds. If you're serious about being pro-life, that's what we have to do. The way and the time to win over, especially independent voters, if you think that this is a critical election year, now's not the time to be talking about abortion. Wait till November. After the election, go all in then. Anybody that's knocking on doors right now to talk about abortion, I don't think they're helping us. I don't think they're on the right side. They might have good intentions, but if they're doing this as, raising money as a political thing, I highly question it. Because right now, independent voters, their minds are already made up. It sucks. It's a sad fact. Take the L now, and let's work on being wise with our actions. Sorry, I should silence my phone. All right. So that's the third. The next one, fourth one. This is the last one. Are you ready? These are their all important criteria that they're going to use to select their grassroots candidates. So because they're saying that they're grassroots candidates, they're signaling that they've already decided who they want to endorse. They already know who they want to endorse. There's no question. This is how they're justifying it and saying that, look at what good people we are because we're choosing these candidates based on such good criteria. Okay, so the fourth, they save the best for last, of course. All right. The fourth criteria, my voice is cracking because it's so bad, is acknowledge election malfeasance in 2020 and 2022. Now, why is this terrible? Because this is nothing more than a virtue signal. This is a struggle session. You must believe that there was election fraud in 2020 or 2022, or you may not run. You are not, this is what they're saying. You're not really a Republican unless you believe that there was election fraud in 2020 and 2022. Now, I absolutely believe that Joe Biden did not get 81 million votes. I don't know very many Republicans that do believe that he got 81 million legitimate votes. I have yet to meet one, actually. And there might be some that they just don't know. And I think that's actually the most honest position because, unless you've really looked at it, the reality is there's no evidence of machine fraud, like machines flipping votes. There really is no evidence of that. And I think that whole thing is Flynn and his group, his ASOG group, the group Shelby Bush, who ran the Arizona audit, which I believe was designed to fail. They were looking under the wrong rocks deliberately. And I believe that absolutely. And I will be proving that. I'm working on it. Unless of course the evidence leads me in another direction, but so far all the evidence that I've been looking at leads me to that conclusion. So I'm always willing to change my conclusion if the evidence leads me to. But in 2022, I think, you say, okay, well, you can assign there's different causes to the Republicans' losses. The single biggest cause to the Republicans' losses in 2022, in Arizona especially, was Kari Lake, under Carolyn Wren's direction, insulting and turning away Republican voters, insulting and turning away McCain's voters. There were about 300,000 reliable Republican voters who stayed home on election day. She lost by 10,000 votes. There is no credible, even the most outlandish and aggressive evaluations of potential election fraud in Arizona. Like most of it's in the tens of thousands. This is 300,000 votes that she deliberately turned away. Not just from herself, but also from Blake Masters and Abe Hamadeh. And part of the evidence of that is, I forget her name, but I think she's the state treasurer, I want to say. She got like 200,000 more votes than Kari Lake. She's Republican. That means something. and all these election fraud people don't like talking about that. They're just their minds can't go there because they've been programmed into believing something that based on just a part of the evidence that's incomplete. So that's what they're trying to perpetuate. This is just PSYOP stuff. If you don't believe that the elections were stolen in 2020 and 22, then we're not going to support you as a party. This is sick. This is sick. You may not, what they're telling you is that you may not examine the evidence for yourself and come to your own conclusions. That's what they're saying. You are not allowed to think for yourself. You must adopt our groupthink, or we will kick you out, and we will not support you. We will support your opponents, even if that means handing the state legislature to the Democrats, because they are anti-Republicans. I could go on and on. Go to the story. Read this email. Read the email all the way through. The entire thing is completely shocking. The way that the manipulative use of language, there's emotional manipulation and abuse, in my view. There is spiritual manipulation. They are like, they try to invoke God in order to justify their collectivist Marxist endeavor here. This is insane. This is a party that is incredibly sick. And somehow the people of Arizona, I used to live in Arizona. I lived there for 28 years. I love Arizona. A huge part of my heart is in Arizona. I grew up there. I love it. I've spent, when I lived there, I spent so many nights camping out under the stars in the desert, in the mountains, traveling around the state. I've hunted, I've fished, I've camped, I've backpacked, I've mountain biked all over the state. I love Arizona. I love the people of Arizona. But there's something really wrong. Y'all can't let this happen anymore. You got to stand up and do something about it. So I'm just going to end with, it sure looks like a campaign. And I think all of it really ultimately points back to Mike Flynn. And like I said at the beginning, I'm just going to kind of come full circle. This tweet just weeks ago from Mike Flynn, putting himself up on Mount Rushmore, saying, "I'm General Mike Flynn. I'm 65 years young. I'm in the US, and I'm damn sure not voting for Joe Biden in November." It's not an accident that he didn't say I'm voting for Trump in November. And you see his movie bus. It sure looks like a campaign. When he came to Arizona, MCRZ promoted at their meeting. They talked about it. I was told this at their meeting right before. It was just days before he was there. Ray Michaels from LD8 stood up, and he's besties with Brian Ferentz. He's often on Michelle Swinnick's show with Brian Ferentz and others. He's besties with all of them. He's close with Shelby Bush. And I've listened to him, and he sure sounds like a Marxist to me, the way he talks. They're collectivists. But he was the one that stood up, and he promoted the Flynn documentary and the Flynn bus tour stop, telling everybody to go to it. And then he brought forward some sort of resolution for censures. So while he had the mic. So this is the Flynn psyop within the Republican Party. Now, there's a lot of people that have talked about all kinds of other Flynn efforts. I think that what he has done here within the Republican Party is the most destructive and harmful of all of his psyops, potentially short of what Ivan Raiklin is talking about right now and also Joel Altman and Ann Vandersteel and David Clements and Dr. Frank and all of the Flynn podcast network, what they're talking about in a township by township, county by county insurrection, trying to take over local clerks, local board of supervisors, local board of trustees, local county board of commissioners, trying to take them over, not with elections, not the constitutional method, but by force. This is mob rule. What Ivan Raiklin is talking about, taking justice into our own hands. That's not justice. That's not constitutional. Just as these people here are not Republicans that are doing what they're doing to the party, the Flynn network and everything that they represent, they're not constitutionalists. They are not pro-American. They say they are, just like Shelby Bush says she's for Trump. But you got to look behind what they say and look at their actions. And it's very disturbing. So I do believe, I don't want to leave you with complete despair. I do believe that we're going to win in November. I do believe that we're going to stomp out. And I think that even talking about this here and getting the word out about what these people are planning, what these people are evildoers, and what they're planning. They are plotting evil. They are doing evil. Getting the word out, I believe, is the best way to stop it. So that's what I'm trying to do, and I ask you for your help in that. Get the word out. Have people watch this if you think it's helpful. Have people read what I've written if you think that's helpful. Tell them in your own words if you think that's more helpful. But people need to know what these people are planning, what their actions say and their private words say, because a person's private words that they try to hide from the public are much more instructive as to the true nature of their intentions than what they say publicly. So I'll leave it with that. I think the power is in our hands. The solution is to become statesmen who can discern truth from falsehood, who examine the evidence, weigh the evidence, have the humility to admit they're wrong when they're wrong. And that's all I'm trying to do. And I'm really glad that you're here with me. I appreciate your support. Much more to come.